Greetings and welcome to Legacies of Wavryn, Lore of the Endelment. This will be Chapter 8 of this reading. Everything around me was completely black, and my body felt like it wasn't even there. The place was dead silent, and all I could think about were questions. Regrettable ones. Why her? What did I do wrong? Why couldn't I protect her? Was it because of not being a real friend? Was it because I wasn't by her side when she needed me? Was I heartless? The questions went on forever, even repeated themselves. However, they faded out when I heard a voice. A familiar voice. Yet I couldn't remember whose it was for some reason. The voice faded in and said, "Wake up. Wake up, Ray. It's time. The rebirth of the ancients. The Endelment." I opened my eyes and found myself lying on my back, my arms and legs spread out slightly, with my head forward. Everything around me was still black, but I was able to see myself perfectly clear. Even the thinnest strand of my black hair was visible to the naked eye, like I was lightly glowing. As I stood myself up, the distant voice said, "You're awake. That's good." "Who are you?" I asked as I looked around, which was pointless once I found that there was absolutely nothing around me but a blackened area. "Have you forgotten? Has it really been that long?" I had a guess as to who it might be, but I didn't want to come to that conclusion. So instead, I asked, "Can you show yourself?" The voice laughed at that, then replied, "Of course, Ray. Excuse me for my ignorant behavior. I would never think to keep myself a secret from you." A large bright white wolf that seemed like it was shining slightly appeared in front of me by fading in as it walked towards me, then moved to sit about 5 feet away. The wolf had long fur with a tail that was the length of its body. Its fur acted as if it was flourishing in the wind, but there was no wind, not even an atmosphere. The wolf's eyes shined brightly, irises light golden, with the pupils light silver, along with its claws just as white as its fur. When I saw the wolf, my thought that it might be Grandpa was completely tossed out the window, seeing as Grandpa had disappeared and I was hoping to find him one day. Once I saw the wolf, I remembered who he was and whispered, "No way. It's..." The wolf's voice stopped fading in as it said, "I am honored and proud to meet you in person, Ray. And yes, it is I, Koju, creator of worlds. I'm sorry we haven't spoken since..." He then glanced down for a second and continued, "Since Jijiku disappeared." Just then, I thought, did he just... "Yes, Ray, I read your mind. A simple ability for a god. And don't worry, everything is fine. Your friend Wolf is perfectly alright. Rufus's powers don't work as they may appear. You will be able to see her again soon." Thank you. "We must talk, Ray. There are more, but one is missing right now. He's substituting for you in your body back on Earth." Surprised, yet angry at that, I said, "Shadow." "Yes," another distant voice said. It was a nice, calm, and soothing voice that could make an ice-cold heart warm. Slightly distracted by the gracefulness of the voice, I didn't try to look for it at first, as it continued, "We needed him to help you in order for us to speak in person. However, he doesn't need to be here to speak to you, Ray. But don't worry, he shall not harm those that you know while he's there." I regained myself and looked over to my left to see 2 giant, furry, bright white paws, with the left one placed over the right. Frightened at just the size of the paws, I hesitantly looked up at who owned them to see a 9-tailed fox. This fox was insanely big, possibly able to stand about 25 feet tall. The fox lied down on its belly as it gave me a smirk, while looking down at me with its fire blue shining eyes. Quivering a bit, I asked the fox, "May I ask who you are?" The fox giggled, then said, "Of course, Ray. I am Elenu, Queen of Elum. But you may just call me Light." Light? I thought. Light as in... "Yes," Koju replied, listening to my thoughts again. "The light that shines through Shadow's darkness in the end of all your tales. Light is Shadow's twin sister. And wherever Shadow should ever take over, Light will always be there to shine the way to a new hope." Still staring at Light, I thought, damn, she's huge. Oh crap. I hope she didn't hear that. Koju laughed at what I had thought, then a loud booming voice said, "So, this is the one that was spoken of as the legend?" I looked over to my right to see another very big animal looking down at me, but it wasn't any normal animal. It was a behemoth, a large dog-like beast with a lion's tail and fern green snake eyes. Its fur was midnight blue, and its claws were black, slightly stained with blood. It was bigger than Light all around, and far more muscular, absolutely fearsome. The behemoth had two large blood-red horns that came out from the back of its head and curled over the top, tapering to a sharp point about 2 inches past the side of its snout. When it talked, you could see its massive black fangs and sharp teeth. Every now and then, it quickly slung out something from its mouth, like a dark pink snake-like tongue. When I looked over at the behemoth, it said, "He doesn't look so powerful to me. I could crush him with just one of my claws." It then crouched down a bit to lower its head closer to me and had its snout just a foot away, where it continued, "Without even trying." Man, he had bad breath too. "No shit, Hegu," Light said. "He's the size of a toothpick to us. Now quit being a jackass and introduce yourself." Hegu glanced over at the fox, then took a few steps back as he bowed to me and said, "1,000 pardons, my lord. As you now know, I am Hegu." He raised himself to stand up straight, towering over me as he continued, "If you remember, I was the one that your grandfather, Lord Jijaku Shero, summoned to aid him in battle. He was the greatest conjurer in your region, and no other summoned to the Mortal Realm was as powerful as I at his aid." I nodded my head in response as I said, "I remember." He gave a nobleman's nod, then lied down as another voice said, "You know you guys are just wasting time with your boring and lame-ass intros." I looked back over at Koju, hearing a feminine voice come from where he was, finding another bright white wolf the same size as him. However, her eyes were slightly different. They shined silver with gold pupils. The new wolf was rubbing her head up against Koju's neck very affectionately, so I assumed she was his lover. She passed in front, from his left side to his right, also using her tail to rub up against his neck, as she said, "Just tell him what he needs to know so that we can see if he's the real deal or not." Koju just sat still, facing me as he ignored the other wolf's motions, and said, "Kalita, enough. This isn't the time nor the place for this." With that, I realized something. From what I could remember, Koju was the creator of worlds, and Kalita was the creator of life. But what I was told, Kalita was Koju's twin sister. That's kind of weird. She continued to move back and forth, rubbing her head and tail up against her brother affectionately as she said, "What? You'll have to tell him one way or another sometime soon." She then moved to his right side and turned to jump off her front legs so she could hang on to him, with her arms hung around his neck. She then quietly spoke into his right ear and asked, Or is it that it creeps you out that I want you? Light glanced at them and asked, "Is this really the time for you to be doing that?" Koju rolled his eyes as he shook his head, only annoyed by his sister, then looked back at me and said, "Sorry, my sister's a bit impatient." Creepy, I thought. Afterwards, I asked, "What did you want to talk about?" He sighed and glanced down at the blackened floor, then took a deep breath as he looked back up at me and replied, "Though Kalita is the mother of all life, she did not give life to you or your brothers. And ever since you were all born, we've patiently watched over you, thinking that you might just end up dying at an early age. But over the last few years, we've been thinking, one of you just might be the one of legends, the one called the Endelment, a powerful being of life, which is only known by us as the god among mortals. Not to say you may be the creator, of course," Light added. "Of course. However, legend speaks only of its coming, not of its form or method." Kodu then looked at me confused as he continued, "In fact, not even us gods know of what it might bring once revealed. We can only speculate." He went back to being calm as he said, "Which is why we brought you here to talk. Though we have yet to speak to your siblings, we hope that you will be kind enough to deliver our message." I stood in silence for a few seconds, trying to figure out why my brothers and I were the ones suspected of being this Endelment. Then I responded with, "Yes, Lord Koju, as you wish." "Very well then." I stood confused and shocked, but keeping my outer appearance calm, while another voice faded in. It was far more vicious than Heigu's voice, and, for some reason, it gave me great anger. It was a dark and sinister voice that gave me the creeps. I almost couldn't stand to hear it. My, it said. He is far different than any other Kexan. One might say, threatening. His body is much more than what it seems. His powers are far greater than what I had expected at this age. Outstanding. Even his strength is beyond anything I've ever known. Nice of you to drop in, Shadow, Heigu said. So you think he just may be the one? Oh no, not yet. First I must see if his body can handle my full power and all of what it holds. Which, I'm sure it can. Then we will see if he just may be. Shadow gave another sinister laugh, then said, Plus, I want to use Rakar once more. I haven't held that magnificent tool of destruction in my hands since that accursed Callius banished me from the mortal realm. Just then, I thought, oh shit, that's right. I still have Rakar in my coat. Kalita chuckled as she looked over at me, then said, Don't worry so much. It's your realm after all. Nothing bad is going to happen while you're away, my lord. Kalita? Koju barked as he turned his head with a jerk. Sorry, brother, she whispered as she turned back towards him. I can't help myself. She lightly and gently licked her brother on his right cheek, then placed her head on his as she whispered, Just like I can't help myself with you. I looked over at Kalita, irritated that she could read my mind as well, and thought, Creator, damn it, man. I hate that they can do that so easily. Oh, shut up, Ray, she barked, looking back over at me with just her eyes. She then pushed herself off Koju to face me as she continued, You're being immature. And guess what? Only Koju and I can read minds. With that, she turned her eyes to glance over at her brother with a smile and said, Thankfully. Koju just rolled his eyes, then looked back at me and said, Since you've been in the realm of gods, time has been stopped just so we could talk. But before we let you leave, Ray, you must accept this gift from all of us. As if. Shut it, sis, Koju barked as he glanced over at her again. then looked over at Hegu and gave a nobleman's nod and said, "If you would, please." I glanced over at Hegu just as he calmly knelt down to have his snout once again a foot away and blew a breath of air at me, which I didn't understand until a second afterwards when he raised himself back up. I glanced over at Koju and Kalita to see if their souls flashed for a few seconds where their hearts were. Then it vanished. I looked back over at the behemoth and he said, "By the power invested in me, I have granted you, Zaec, Zaec, and Shero, soon to..." Koju quickly and loudly cleared his throat, then looked away from us as he said, "Sorry." Hegu glanced over at him, then looked back at me and continued, "I have granted you the power to summon gods for aid in battle. Not many are given this gift. Use this power wisely, my lord." I knelt down on my right knee and placed my right fist down, while my left forearm on my left knee, bowing my head as I said, "Thank you, Lord Hegu." I then raised myself to stand as I looked over at the wolves and said, "And thank you, Lord Koju." Shadow gave a sinister laugh. Then he said, "Let's go, my lord. It's time we showed Rufus what happens to those who dare go against the gods. Show him what happens when you become a traitor." He then laughed as my mind went blank again and my eyes started to lose their focus. The last thing that happened in the god realm was that I hit the floor face first and blacked out, with Koju's last words being, "Remember, until he is revealed, the Endelment is the one who's doubtful, either of others or himself." This concludes the reading of Chapter 8. Thank you all for watching and listening. If you like what you've seen and heard, there will be a link to my physical works in the description below. And with that being said, stay safe, take care, and we will see you again next week, reading Chapter 9.